Welcome back to the Born and Raised Music Podcast. I am Garrett.
And I'm Kent. And today we have the third installment of our special episode series, Beer with Zack.
Yeah, it's our first repeat.
Yeah, 11 episodes in.
Yeah.
This is a great one. Zack has a lot of questions about the music industry, and we try our best to answer them whenever he comes on. He was curious about these things, so our hope is that as a guy not involved in the music industry, this will be kind of more of an open-ended thing where maybe people who aren't super involved in it or do it professionally might be interested to hear how some of this stuff works.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. We talk about rider items. We share some stories from concerts. Remember those?
Remember concerts?
Remember outside?
Remember?
But no, we cover a whole lot of stuff, and we also, just so everyone knows, we started a few new things. I want to plug those.
We'll plug them right now?
Plug them.
Well, we've got Beer Me That Vinyl.
Yes, Beer Me That Vinyl. We just finished our second episode of that. A third one coming soon, hopefully, so be looking for that. And we've been trying to support a lot of local artists with selling their merch on our website, so check that out. See what we got going on.
Yeah.
You ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Wait a second. Wait.
Okay.
Wait a second. Before we get into that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to note really quickly
Mm-hmm.
that Zack mentions early on in this episode that he used to play in a band.
Yes, he did.
And that band was a Christian rock band called Crossed Out. And I searched far and wide through the deepest depths of the internet.
Like 4 pages in on Google.
I signed up for MySpace. I logged into MySpace hoping to find some of his old music.
We did find my old music, but we didn't find his old music.
In 2020, year of our Lord, I signed up for a new MySpace account so I could try to listen to cut some clips of Crossed Out, and could not find it, and I was so disappointed.
If you email Zack at KnoxBrewTours.com, maybe he'll record you one. He'll make a new one for you.
If those masters exist somewhere, I mean, when he's going to be back on the podcast,
somebody send them to us.
I'm going to find them.
Ryan Berner, if you're listening, send us some of that.
Or
music.
Tyler Hayes, Matt Malone, somebody that was in that band.
Please
send me these clips so that we can surprise Zack by throwing them in there.
I like it. All right, are you ready now?
Now let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back to Born and Raised Music Podcast.
I feel like Zack and I were still just chit-chatting, and I could feel Garrett's energy shift to like, okay, guys, it's podcast mode now.
I just really want
just
to
like the way you sat up in your chair. I was like, oh, I guess we're starting.
I guess this is it.
I mean, sure. We
We're
can still
here now.
chit-chat. We're obviously... It's just weird to just chit-chat because we're always just chit-chatting.
That's true. I mean, we mentioned this, I think, in the last episode. We do share an office together.
It's true. You went a whole 6 feet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Responsibly.
Responsibly, right.
6 feet, yeah.
6 feet.
Yeah. Keep it, yeah. And there's even a bathroom with 2 toilets. But I think we only use one of, I don't know.
Well, because one's creepy and
Yeah.
dark. And I don't like being in there.
There's a cricket that lives in there, and he has no idea when it's nighttime.
Oh, that's Henry.
Henry?
He pays rent here.
He pays more rent than we do.
He's
You want to know why our rent is so cheap? It's him. He's carrying us.
Henry's really subsidizing that.
yeah, Henry. That's Henry. He's been with us for a while.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Born and Raised Podcast.
This is our first repeat. Because the first...
Is that right?
Yeah, because we had Beer with Zack, and it was just a 2-part. So it was just one episode broken into 2.
Because we've been doing this during COVID-19, we've only been doing this 6 weeks. It feels like we've been doing this for 3 years.
Yeah.
It does.
This is only our 11th episode.
It makes me feel better because if we had been doing this a year, I feel like we should be way better at it than we.
You said he was our first repeat, and I was like, but with all the hundreds of guests that we've had, surely we've repeated somebody. I was like, we've been
11
doing
of
this for
them.
6 weeks.
So how many guests have you all had? And what episodes? How many episodes have you done?
This will be the 12th episode.
Okay, this is the 12th episode. One of them was just Garrett and I. 2 of them were you, because we split the first one into a 2-part.
Okay, so 8 guests.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See,
Is that math?
I don't know. I went to beer nice.
Yeah, that's math.
Yeah.
That sounds checks out.
That's really exciting.
Ask the kid from Farragut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not about math.
Go Dogs.
Don't ask me about math.
Okay, well, so basically, for anyone that's listening that maybe didn't hear our last episode,
That's a good. Yeah. Good
I
point.
basically convinced the host of this podcast to let me come on the show and ask them questions about the beer industry or the music industry. I did this last time.
Man.
About the music industry
amazing.
and about your all's podcast as well. And I've got a pretty lengthy list of questions here for you. So
Well,
whenever you're ready, I'm ready to fire them
Yeah,
off.
I want to make sure our listeners know Zach is from Knox Brew Tours, and we spent a lot of time on his bus recently, celebrating birthdays and such. But if you get a chance, once all this ends, you should definitely take a tour on those buses because they're rad. I'm sorry if things are broken. It's probably Kent and I's fault. We probably
on
broke
the
a
bus?
window or something.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
But he'll get them fixed, I'm sure. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
next time you get on the bus, they'll be clean and pristine and
Oh, yeah.
so ready for a brew tour.
But these celebration buses have been a lot of fun, and not only it's been fun. We've made a little bit of money doing it, but it's been really rewarding personally as well, just to see people like smiling and laughing and happy and spending time together, and like it's just been a good time for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think goes to say, like, where we are right now, the fact that people get so much joy from three grown men dancing like idiots just tells you what kind of position we're in right now. But it's true. People have so much fun with it, and it just it brightens up their day, and I'm glad that we're a part of it.
My two favorite celebration bus moments so far are
Hey,
definitely.
before we get into these stories, should we? I don't feel like we've explained what it is that we're even talking about for anybody listening to this, right?
We can always just edit it back to
that's
the
true.
beginning.
So
But
celebration,
we're not going
bus,
to, yeah.
But you know we're not going.
What
to.
is the celebration bus?
Celebration bus is when the three of us roll up to people's houses in the Brew Tours bus, and we get out and celebrate in whatever way that we can find to make
Props, the costumes,
experience
music,
personal.
Yeah, we have a generator
Streamers.
on the bus,
yeah.
guitars that aren't plugged in.
the full sound system.
I mean, the main features that we're rolling up with the bus, playing loud music and making a spectacle, making a big deal out of whomever's being celebrated. But I think what has been great about it is how unbelievably weird it's been. We just have used whatever is at our disposal, props and costumes and whatever else. And I think the weirder we get, and this is my hope for everybody that's ordered these things, that the weirder we get, the more that becomes like the lasting memory of quarantine.
Yes.
Because if
that.
we're so weird that
Yeah.
that you can't not forget it, maybe that's what they remember instead of
It would
like
be beautiful if 10 years from now, when someone's reflecting on the pandemic, they'll be like, man, there was so many this and this and that and all these, challenges, but in the middle of all that, and they're like, and these guys showed up in this bus.
One of them was in a panda suit.
Oh, and I was going to say, one of my favorite memories from it so far was when we played the the
Lion King, yeah.
and you had on the lion headdress with like a cloth around you, and everyone was staring at you. And Kent and I run around the bus, and right at the main like pinnacle of the intro, we tried to pick you up, and that was ridiculous. And the other one was definitely Pop Punk Panda for sure.
Pop
Pop
Punk
Punk
Panda.
Panda will go down in the annals of celebration bus history as one of the greats.
I rocked the head off of the
Well,
panda.
you had this panda head on and this bass guitar, and you were singing the words to "Lit," and it was amazing.
If there was kids there, I would have traumatized them
Oh,
because
yeah.
the head flew 15
well,
feet.
you kind of traumatized the dog a little bit.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I did. That's true.
There's a chance you traumatize the adults. That's entirely possible. We don't know for sure. We won't know.
No. Time will tell.
It's too soon. It's a
waiting game.
Okay, so yeah, it's a celebration bus.
Well, we're here. We've got beers in hand from Last Days of Autumn, and
Yep.
we're ready to answer some of your questions about music. So,
Well,
you are now officially the host. You're take
Yeah,
it from
you
here.
take it
Take
away
over.
from
Yeah.
here. So, I was brainstorming last night in preparation for today's episode, and I used to play music, as we mentioned, and we had like a little contract, and we were like, one of the things that was in our contract was we played a lot of churches, and it never failed that we would eat pizza like 6 nights a week
Oh,
because
right.
they would just get pizza. And at one point we were like, okay, we put in our rider, right?
Yeah.
Our contract that dinner had to be provided and it couldn't be pizza, which we then later added in hot dogs as well. And I've always wondered, like, so for anyone who's listening who has no idea what I'm talking about, what is a rider? Mm-hmm. Is it? I don't even know if it's spelled R-I-D-E-R or R-I-T-E-R. And why is it called a rider? That doesn't even make. What is a rider? Like a wagon? Like a red flyer?
So
like,
a rider it's basically just any addendum, any add-on to a contract.
okay.
I mean, that's the official term, but we deal with bands all the time that aren't to the level where they need to send a contract, even though they should. If you're a band, you should be sending contracts. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Future episode.
Sometimes we have riders with no contract. It's kind of just come to mean like typically 2 things: hospitality and specs for your
Technical.
sound system.
Yeah,
technical
tech rider and a hospitality rider. Those are the 2 kind of things that are
and the name comes from, it's a lot more simple than you might think. It's just that like it rides along with the rest of it rather than adding a whole new legal document.
Rider, I hardly know her.
Oh, don't you even dare.
So Ken's blood pressure just went up.
Okay. So
What's worse is that I'm going to listen back to this and I'm going to get more mad when I'm listening to the podcast in my car.
He hates those jokes, and I usually refrain, but I was like, this one will haunt him forever.
What I hate is that I like that joke and you ruined it for me forever.
Yep.
Because you do it 40 times a day. Neither here nor there. Rider. So most of the time what we're dealing with riders is hospitality. Like you were talking about, pizza, hot dogs. We've had some good ones.
Well, that's what's funny is that a lot of bands aren't vegetarian, but they specifically put vegetarian into their riders because it's a really easy way to avoid like barbecue and pizza
without sounding necessarily needy.
Yeah. We need a very specific thing. It's like we will eat anything fresh. We just really don't want the same food over and over again.
I just know that when I was traveling a lot on the road, like it's easy to get crap food from a fast food restaurant. So if you can go to a venue and get a home cooked meal or to get something like even just salad, it's a lot harder to do that outside of the venue. So if the venue can provide that, it was always a nice bonus.
Right. And since we book shows at Pretentious Beer Company, that's like where almost all of the shows that we put on are. We'll have bands that come in and are like, where's the closest thing where we can get something healthy? And I'm always like, Barley's, I guess you can get a pesto wrap, but like everywhere else in the old city is
kind of bar food.
Yeah, kind of bar food.
We need some fresh food in the old
Well, that
city.
new Japanese place moved across
Naba?
the street, but we haven't done a show since it opened.
Tamales are good too.
Anyway, but yeah, writers, we've had some interesting times with some writers that bands have had. My favorite one, do you remember what I'm going to say, Garrett?
I've got my own, so I'm gonna let you say your favorite one first. And
My favorite one,
will trump yours.
our second Sunset on Central, a band called Future Thieves. The only thing they had on their rider was a jar of peanut butter, a jar of strawberry jelly, a loaf of bread, and a 6-pack of Rolling Rock. And we were all too happy to take care of that for them.
I love that.
It was pretty great. And those guys are super cool. We've booked them a couple more times.
I thought you were going to say the Weeks, because the Weeks asked for a birthday cake, and we gave them a birthday cake. We threw them a birthday party.
I didn't.
That's where that started.
That was one of the early ones. You kind of worked on that a lot more than I did. That was kind of before we were like a team on everything. I think I came in late and helped with some marketing in like the last 3 days.
But that's where so Sunset on Central's artist hospitality is always ridiculous. And it all stemmed from that. They asked for a birthday cake, so we're like, let's throw them a birthday party. And then
we've done that every year since.
But
we changed the theme of the birthday party.
Right. There was Batman's 69th birthday.
That was fun.
That was a good one.
Last year was
Pokemon. It was Taco Pokemon Party. That's what
Pokemon Taco Party.
Pokemon Taco Party.
Gotta catch 'em all.
But my favorite rider item that I've ever seen was a naked photo of B. Arthur, the Golden Girl. That was on Tyler Childers, and
That's awesome. Do you know what that's in reference to? I'll be really impressed if you do.
No, I don't.
That is from the movie Airheads with Adam
Oh no,
Sandler
I do. Yeah.
and
Okay, now I do
Brendan
remember
Fraser
that now.
and Steve Buscemi.
That's a great movie.
That was one of their demands when they took hostages. The naked photo of B. Arthur. Yeah, I mean that kind of stuff. Like, there's also like Van Halen was famously asking for M&Ms with all the brown ones taken out.
Yeah.
So David Lee Roth could understand like if people are actually reading the hospitality rider.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. Was you hear these like sort of infamous stories of like really popular musicians like Whitney Houston and like I guess I thought it was Def Leppard. I mean, you know how the rumor game works and like about these like really crazy demands, but then you also hear that they're not really crazy demands. That's just their test to see if they read all the other details that matter.
It was part of the Van Halen contract as we toured through the arenas in the 80s that there would be no brown M&Ms found in the backstage area, or the promoter would forfeit the entire show at full pay. This was touted wildly and widely as simple rock star misdemeanor excess and being abusive of others simply because we could, and who am I to get in the way of a good rumor? In fact, the reality is quite different. Our setup time and our teardown time was going 3 times over. We were going into Union Golden time. It was taking 6, 8, 7, 9 hours longer than it should have, etc. A lot of that was because the crew was unfamiliar with this size of a production. The rest of it was because promoters frequently didn't read the contract rider, and we would have structural, physical issues because, hey, there wasn't the proper electricity, load bearing, stress, etc.
What? Sometimes they come from a manager. Like, did you guys have did you guys have a tour manager when
Basically, it was me.
Yeah. Sometimes the manager will put in stuff for the writer, and we'll get it for the band, and they'll be like, "Oh, thanks. You didn't have to do that." Like, they had no idea that was even on their writer.
Okay,
Yeah.
does it ever?
No one here likes hummus. It's like it says hummus on your rider.
Yeah, that happens actually not that infrequently.
Yeah. Someone asked me what LaCroix was, and I was like, it's what's on your rider.
So hospitality doesn't necessarily is not limited to pre-show, during show, post-show. It could also include hotel room or even transportation from the airport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, anything you have to advance. It seems like the contracts are pretty boilerplate, and a lot of the specific requests that are up to that particular night usually end up on the rider or in the advance process where we call them and ask.
The bigger the artist, there is a contract and then a rider. I mean, they're not one and the same. They are 2 different documents.
Yeah, a lot of times, yeah.
How much pushback do people like you all who put on these shows have? Like, let's pretend you go to book, you know, I'm just going to use David Ramirez because I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to push.
It's funny that you bring him up. I don't know if we may have to take this out. He had a really extensive writer the first time that we booked him.
I don't remember that.
In years since, it like kind of whittled down.
You give them whiskey. Here's the thing. They list it, at least you should. If you're listing stuff, list it and prioritize it.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of times they're going to get the top ones.
A bottle of Jameson is always number one.
You get David a bottle of Jameson, he's going to be happy. He really doesn't care.
So it's interesting you say prioritize. So this is giving me 2 more questions. So my band, you guys reach out to me to book me. I send you my rider. There is a request in it that you guys can't fulfill. Mm-hmm. Is the conversation over at that point, or do you respond with, "We can do all the things, but we can't do this"?
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. Just like everything else, it's a negotiation with typically with the booking agent.
Yeah, we're here to work. We're all here to work, and I think at the end of the day, like, that's ultimately the biggest priority. If we're providing an opportunity for a musician to work, they're gonna show up and work and get paid. That's what they care about. The rest of it, technical writers are relatively important to them. You know, they want to make sure they can provide the quality of show that they want.
Experience.
Yeah, exactly. No one's ever gonna cancel a show over small rider stuff, but a lot of times, like with festivals, it's way easier to just say, yeah, we'll get you all of your hospitality rider stuff, but we're going to go into this tech rider, because things at that level, like getting certain kind of board or, 10 pairs of in-ears, like to rent, that'll add $2,000
really expensive,
to
yeah.
your,
Gotcha.
your budget. So you go, we'll give you all that stuff because it's like $200 worth of stuff. But we need to talk about this tech stuff because we can't afford all of it. We're going to get a lower,
And we try to take care of every single hospitality rider item, and definitely tech rider if we're able to. But
Right.
like we don't have the funds usually. Like if somebody needs a new soundboard,
Right.
But like for hospitality, we try to get everything that we possibly can, as so long as we can afford it, and it doesn't
If there's something that you
yeah,
can't
exactly.
doesn't take us from
provide-
being in the black to being in the red.
Yeah, if there's something you can't provide, do you communicate that to them ahead of time, or is it just like we did our best?
That's part of the advance process.
First way is the best way to do it.
Yeah, a lot of times, when you go through the contracts, there's different ways. You can literally just cross through it and sign it and send it back and just be like, we're not giving you that. Or what you might do is circle it and go as per advance. And because about 2 weeks out to like sometimes like 3 days out, but like you call the tour manager or artist and you advance with them. You talk about the show in advance and you kind of go over those items. And that's where a lot of the people are reasonable. Like, hey, listen, we couldn't get LaCroix, but we've got some sparkling water. Is that cool? Yeah, well, you don't even worry about it. That's a lot of times is how those conversations end up going.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about all the different details and all the ways that, it's basically just you're having a conversation with someone on paper. It's kind of like, these are the things that we need to do to be successful. These things you need to do to be successful. And I just think it could get really complicated probably pretty quickly, or simple depending on the artist and the promoters.
Yeah, I think tech riders is something that like we try to advance early if we see a problem in it, because that could be a deal breaker. But like, usually hospitality stuff is just like, you show up and you're like, well, it's hot dogs again. Well, I'm not going to go on stage. No, I'm getting paid to go on stage. I'm just disappointed in hot dogs. I might not come play here again. Yeah. And that's why we try to provide as much of the hospitality riders, because we're trying to build a reputation with
They
artists.
want to when their manager or agent texts them, hey, you want to play this gig in Knoxville for Born and Raised? You want their response to be, fuck yeah, I do. Like,
exactly.
I definitely want to do that.
Love those guys. They treat us well. They take care of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And one time, I don't know how much we should be talking about like band specific rider items, but this is probably fine. John Paul White,
It was
from the Civil Wars, came to play the Outpost, and I said beforehand, I was like, whatever he wants, because it was kind of an underplay for him. I felt like we were pretty lucky to get that show, to be honest. And I was like, whatever he asked for, he's gonna get it, no questions asked. And then I was looking through his rider items, and it was like all these different weird kinds of like Cheetos and Doritos, like the wacky flavors. I was like, I don't even know if you can get this at Kroger. And I was just like confused. I was like, why does this guy care so much about all of these different like Cheeto varieties?
Yeah, flaming hot, twisted. Like,
And then when we got there, it's because his son was touring with him.
oh, and his son loves him.
And his son loves him.
He
And
literally gave his son. He's like, all right, kid, put whatever you want on that rider.
yeah, so I mean that was one of those things. It's like sometimes that was a perfect like humbling example of like I thought it was frankly kind of ridiculous, and then once I saw the reason why, which I didn't know until he got there, I was like, oh, that makes total sense.
Kent did a great job at going above and beyond. He's like, I couldn't find the specific ones, but I bought every single flavor remotely close to that. And the kid was like, I haven't even heard of some of these before. And so
was
like,
pumped.
he was amped. And like, and
You just made it harder for the next promoter.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and his dad obviously was like, man, you really made his night. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, and it was great. And
Kent went above and beyond. He got a Cheeto costume and did a little dance. Like,
fun aside, by the way, that kid was super cool. His dad's from Muscle Shoals, Alabama. John Paul White is from Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and he shows up wearing like decked out in Tennessee Vols gear.
oh, that's
Found out that they're
Yeah.
both Tennessee fans living in enemy territory in Alabama. And we played Kentucky that day, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but that was like when Kentucky was a top 10 team for like a minute, and we beat the brakes off, and we got to enjoy talking about that with John Paul White and his son. It was a really sweet moment.
That's awesome. Okay, so we'll move on from the rider contract. I'm sure you
Okay,
can come up with some
yeah.
more, but
That's always a fun one.
yeah. So okay, so even my time in music, this next question is relevant because I still didn't really understand it. Keep in mind, I was much younger when I was pursuing music, but So
Back in my day.
yeah, back in my day. So a band goes to the studio, records an album, and then they go to release this album, usually now on digital platforms, maybe in a physical CD. They try to get on the radio. They try to do shows. They do all these things. At some point in that process of creating and sharing your music with the world, there is something called publishing. And I never really understood what it is or how it works or what it's doing. It just, to me, as an artist at that point, before I still don't understand it. It just seemed like one more person I had to write a check to for no apparent reason, so that people could listen to my music. Explain, like, what is publishing?
You shouldn't have to be writing a check for people to listen to your music because you own the publishing, right? Unless you are covering a song.
I question mark?
Okay. So there's
Who was asking for you to give them money? Is what we want to get. You may have been bamboozled.
I definitely was bamboozled at some point or another. I mean,
Well, they might have been trying to sell you services for your publishing or something like that. Who
maybe
knows?
that's what it was. But yeah, so what
Publishing.
is publishing?
What is publishing? This is a really big, like, so I've taken 2 classes on publishing. I got an A in both, and I'm not going to confidently give you a good answer on this one. I think that's
weird
where
flex, but go on. No, just
yeah. So like, publishing was intentionally created complicated. I think that's my personal opinion of it. Once it's not like my teacher said like, oh yeah, we did this to screw over artists, but like when you kind of look at it, it's like, why is there 200% of a song? Why isn't there just 100% of a song?
Yeah,
Like,
that also confused me too.
I think that's the intention.
And I remember somebody telling me some sort of weird analogy where it's like, okay, if this song sells, you get 10% of it, but the publisher gets 5 cents and you get 5 cents. But if you only wrote 50% of that or half of that song, then you get 2.5 cents. And I'm like, so wait, why is this person getting 5 cents?
You write the song.
Okay.
How do you go get the money for all the different royalties that might be out there? For example, there's sync royalties. So if someone puts it in a movie, there is broadcast royalties.
If they play it on the radio?
Yeah, play it on the radio. There are a handful of different kinds of mechanical royalties that are out there. Okay. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get paid for this. Anytime a song is played or performed, distributed, you should get paid as a songwriter.
Okay.
Who's keeping track of that, though? And how do you go get those pennies?
Right.
That's where publishing comes in. So there's these companies that literally manage catalogs of songs.
Like BMI and ASCAP.
Yes. Well,
yeah.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. It's a little more complicated than that.
Okay, just the companies that help manage me getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there's different publishing companies out there. And what they do is they go, we're going to buy half of the rights to your song. It's the publishing half. And they go, but don't worry, you get to keep 100% of your songwriting credit. And you go, okay, good. So I get to keep 100% of it.
Deal.
Right. But they're actually taking the 100% of the publishing. Or maybe sometimes they only take 50%. It all depends on how the deal is made. But
so how can you have 200% of something?
Again, it's just a way to confuse you. They're technically different parts of the same thing.
Okay, so my song is in a movie, and they say they want to pay me $100 for that song. Mm-hmm. Are you saying $50 goes to the publishing company, $50 goes to me?
If you signed a publishing deal, yes.
So I could...
You currently, when you wrote the song, you own 100% of the songwriting and publishing.
But what I'm doing is
sign a publishing
I'm paying
deal,
them to enforce it, and they want a cut of that.
Not only to enforce it, because enforcement is more of the performing rights organizations, like you said, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC. These companies not only go and collect on your behalf, they manage. So, say if there was a co-write and they're collecting money, they're handling how do you split the pennies up.
It seems
and
kind
they
of
also
like a racket.
They also market that song too.
So they are incentivized to connect that song to Lionsgate or Universal Studios.
Right.
Because
there's a lot of gatekeepers, and they have all the relationships with the gatekeepers. So you sign a deal with them so you can go focus on songwriting. And they're just a middleman, but they focus on marketing and promoting your music from a publishing angle.
In the beer world, we have 3 tiers.
Right.
Manufacturer, distributor, and retailer. Where a brewery makes the beer, then they sell it to a distributor, and then the distributor goes out and sells it to the bars.
Right.
Is that they're kind of the distributor in a way, sort of?
From the songwriting perspective, yeah. So when you kind of think of the music industry, there's multiple revenue streams that you can take advantage of. So selling an album, there's the recording aspect of it. So when you create a recording, you can own the recording. You can also record. You can also own the songwriting. There's two different things that are there.
Right, because I could write a song and then
Toby Keith could go cut it,
and
he owns the master recording of it, or his
he owns
label
the
does.
recording of that song, but he doesn't necessarily own the song.
Right, you still own the song. You get paid every time he sells a record, but who's going to go collect that money for you? You need a company that does it. So that's kind of what publishing is.
And he's
is
okay
intended
with that arrangement because he's the one getting paid $20,000 to do the county fair and sell 100K in merch every year and whatever.
He's making money,
right?
Yeah, he's making money.
Seems like a slight burn on Toby Keith talking about playing county fairs.
No, I mean that's a big circuit. That's a big circuit.
An example, I don't.
A fun legend story. Just an aside here. In Nashville, someone sold the publishing rights to Friends in Low Places to pay a bar tab.
How
it was
big was that
before.
bar tab?
It was before it was ever. It was actually a pretty considerable tab. I think there's actually a podcast about it. You should go listen to it. I think what band put it
I
out?
always love it when podcasts talk about other podcasts.
Yeah.
It's like Inception.
Midland? Is that a country band? Midland.
Mm-hmm.
They have a podcast and they talk about different legends of the Nashville music industry, and that was one they talked about. They talked to the guy who actually did it, but he owed like $1,200 at this bar on Music Row, and it was right when it was right before Garth Brooks had blown up. And Garth really wanted to cut that song, and he was like, "Oh, Garth is going to cut it. I mean, here, man, I'll pay off this tab, and I'll give you a part of this. I'll give you my publishing rights to this." And
Dang.
yeah,
That's a lot of money.
yeah, he still had the songwriting though. He still had the songwriting.
That's good.
But he gave away a very, very expensive part of
Similar story. My mom grew up at one point, and her parents were from Stuttgart, Arkansas, where the first ever Walton's Pharmacy opened. And when Walton's Pharmacy decided to expand into a public company, it was right when she graduated high school. And my grandfather said, for graduation, you can either take a trip to Europe, or I'll get you $100 in stock in Walton's Pharmacy.
Oh my god!
And my mom said, I will take the trip to Europe. Yeah, isn't that crazy? That was
Walmart.
Yeah.
People, Walmart. If you're wondering.
That was in like 1968 or something, 1969, 70, something like that. Anyway, it's crazy. Anyways.
Sheesh.
Okay, so this actually is a perfect segue into like my next question. Because you're talking about publishing, and then you mentioned royalties. And essentially a royalty is just getting a chunk or a piece, getting paid for your creative work.
Right.
How does that work with like cover bands? And I don't necessarily just mean like, I do want to include the country cover band, playing at Cotton Eye Joe's this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to include where you see like traveling acts who go across the nation performing like
Get the Lead Out, the Led Zeppelin tribute band.
Yeah, like the Led Zeppelin tribute.
Two Dog Night, the Three Dog Night tribute band.
Yeah,
the Red Hot Chili Peppers, these kind of bands.
And like there's this one great band that goes around and does Pink Floyd stuff, and like their laser show's crazy and all this stuff. Like
Laser Floyd.
Yeah, is that what they're called?
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
Why do I? That's one of
Wasn't
those things.
there?
Why do I know so
I
many
remember
cover
one
bands?
year Bonnaroo
'Cause they always sell
released
really
their
well.
schedule, and there was a band on there called Les Zeppelin. Les Zeppelin. It was like a Led Zeppelin cover band with a female singer.
Interesting.
But so, how does that work? And does that band supposed to be paying those royalties? Is the venue that hired them responsible for those?
The venue is responsible for getting usually what you'll do is you go to these other, the one thing that we, lightly touched on was PROs, performing rights organizations.
Okay.
They're the ones who kind of enforce the rules. So they represent the artist or the songwriter.
Okay.
And you can sign up to get basically a yearly blanket license of like, we'll pay you $600 and it'll cover all the songs in your catalog.
So if you own a bar
And
Wait,
it's not just
talking
for
about the artist or the
performing, right?
venue?
It's not
The
just
venue.
for cover bands.
But
It's
if it's
also
music
for
playing on the
playing
radio.
Yeah.
recorded music.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any performance of that music should be covered. The deals that they'll send over a blanket license to you, and you kind of tell them like, listen, we have music playing on in the bar, and then we do about 12 shows a year, and they'll go, cool, this is how much it's going to cost you based on your capacity.
Fascinating.
A lot of places still don't have those. The PROs are
What if-
bullies, man. They're bullies.
What if I played artists that didn't have a publishing contract or were not a member of the PRO?
Then that's fine.
That's fine. Or if
That doesn't mean
I'm
they
a member
won't still try to
of-
get money
yeah.
from you, though.
Let's say I'm a member of ASCAP, right? I'm an artist, and I'm a member of ASCAP, but I want to play this place that doesn't have whatever. But I'm only going to play my songs. I have all the right in the world to go perform those songs, and I can give them approval to play to allow me to play those songs at their place, if that makes sense.
But not a
Originals.
Garth Brooks song.
Not a Garth Brooks song, unless they have the rights to play that song.
So this is something that is happening a lot. That's not happening properly.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why PROs exist, and that's why they are kind of bullies, because no one pays them. But like they're supposed to go to all these different places and get licensing for that. It's super complicated. That what you're getting into and you're starting to like uncover is the fact that the publishing world has not kept up with technology. Like
yeah.
like we should be able to have a really simple system that like takes care of all of this stuff, and it just hasn't been updated, and the law hasn't been updated either to keep up with it, and that's partially the reason. Is like, I think there was a big thing that was passed just like I think last year or 2 years ago, that helped songwriters get paid more for Spotify streams.
Yeah.
And that law hadn't been
It
changed.
was like the Music Digitization Act.
Yeah,
That
there
was
was
something that wasn't-
people on both sides of it, but like they're just not keeping up with the technology. Congress isn't.
because it's happening. So
It's tough.
quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it happens quickly, and Congress famously always reacts in kind and moves very quickly. Just kidding. They don't do that at all.
So you mentioned earlier in the episode about COVID and being in the COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't help but wonder, and I'm afraid to ask this question because I don't want there to be any potential, negative implications of this. But like, some of my friends who are local musicians who are doing these Facebook live feeds where they're doing covers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's now a recording on the internet that's going to sort of live there forever. Is there a potential conflict or issue that with that, because that's not a venue that's not paying for that royalty?
That is actively happening right now. So
Yeah, but at the same time, those organizations like BMI and ASCAP aren't going to shake down
Facebook.
a solo musician.
No, it's not their responsibility.
You're saying it's Facebook's?
It's Facebook's responsibility.
Well, that's too far the other way. They're
Yeah,
probably not
exactly.
going to try to lawyer up against.
I
the
mean,
one of the
Facebook they
biggest
can
tech
they could
companies
send
in
a
the world.
cease and desist and get them to pull the video down, but like it's just not.
And
gonna
then this
happen.
is like another weird one. That Canadian astronaut that did that cover of David Bowie's song, "Ground Control."
Yeah.
And like that video got millions of views on YouTube, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, did David Bowie get paid for that?
Yeah. So YouTube actually has a really good system set up with the majority of the major labels where it automatically tags songs when you upload something, and it'll add advertising to
And then pay that artist.
and then pay the artist.
And so maybe the person that has that video is getting $0.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. They won't allow you to monetize that video.
Well, this is getting into a whole other topic, but unless that person had an already thriving YouTube channel that meets minimum requirements for monetization, they made no money on it anyway.
I want to get a little bell where every time something comes up that is like a future topic, we just like ding,
so we can
future episode.
We should actually maybe we'll try to get someone on here who's like a publishing expert to really dive into it, because that's one thing I've noticed about artists in Knoxville is that a lot of them aren't signed up with the PRO. A lot of them don't understand publishing and understand that like right now, no artists are touring. This is the perfect time. You have the time to get online, sort through your catalog, and make sure you're picking up those pennies that you didn't pick up before. One thing I used to do when I was working at a management company is I would go through.
You literally mean.
I literally mean pennies, but
But they can add up.
they can add up. And so, like with BMI, for instance, you can go in there as an artist and log all the shows that you've played in the past, and how many people attended those shows, and they will pay you for your performances
Do
of your
they
songs.
do an audit to prove to like make sure that you're not just full of shit and making up those shows?
Nah. I don't know. I couldn't verify that, but I would assume they have at least a little bit of accountability. Like, I'm sure they have a threshold where you're like, okay, you did not play 200 shows at 2,000 capacity, theaters, that kind of thing. But you can go in there, and I used to do this, and Carolina Story, I used to do this back in the old days when they hardly play in any rooms. Maybe 50 people would come, but they would play a lot of shows. They would get paid $300 or $400 a quarter. So like you might, and you can go back and do it for 2 years. So that you might end up getting a check for $2,000.
That would be epic.
It's definitely worth the time right now. It's a pain to do it in the moment, but what other things are you doing right now if you're not playing shows?
True.
So
that just sounds like a really big headache, but a necessary one so that artists can get paid for their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I hope they come up with a better way. I mean, seems like there's a lot of money in it. Somebody should be investing in the technology for that.
There's a lot of unclaimed money from royalties and from publishing out there.
Do you think if all that money
Why
was...
are you whispering?
I don't want them to hear me. If they hear me, they'll come after me. I'm telling you, these guys are bullies.
Do you think that if all the money that was owed was paid out, that bars and venues and people would be doing things a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I think that they need to change their model. I think that BMI and ASCAP need to understand, yes, music is valuable, but running a bar is incredibly thin margins already. So asking for $1,200 a year is just a lot to ask somebody. That's why a lot of people around here don't pay them.
$1,200 from one bar because the other four aren't paying.
My thought is if you just drop the price, though, you could actually probably get more on board. I think that, I've talked to a lot of, I'm not going to name names, but I've talked to a lot of bar owners in this area that have been, basically, why I call them bullies is because the BMI will call them and harass their employees to get them to try to pay for this and tell them that they're going to sue them and send a lawsuit and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's like getting a red light camera ticket times 100.
Yeah. And if they were just a little more accommodating to, bars and restaurants and breweries, I think more of them would pay, and that would mean more money into the pot for all artists. That's my particular approach to it. But they don't have the resources to actually sue every single business in America over this.
Right, but they can threaten it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I have never, just a few more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been to a show where people have had their cell phones either taken or blocked or hindered in some sort of way, but I've heard about it. A friend of mine, I was at a show here in town where they basically were given like a necklace that had a bag that had a key lock where they had to put their phone in it and then lock it, and then they got it unlocked on the way out. I mean, half of me feels like this sounds awesome because I love a big fan of Switchfoot, but the last Switchfoot show I went to, I watched Switchfoot on the guy in front of me's cell phone video of Switchfoot in front of him because he was standing in front of me. He was taller and it was just distracting. The other half of me is like, well, what if, it's my phone? Like, it's just, there's, what if I go to the bathroom and I want to text my friend, what bar are you going after the show?
Yeah.
I'd love to know how that actually physically works, what your all's opinion of it is, and do you think this is something we'll see more of or less of in the future?
Yeah, well, we'll start with that last one. I do think it's something we'll see more of. It's kind of a growing trend right now. I think it first started popping up about 4 or maybe 5 years ago. I think there are a couple of different companies now, but the main one, like if you said your friend has been to one where they did that, is probably through a company called Yonder.
Is there like an artist that's like known for
well, I think the people who are most famously implementing this at their shows are actually comedians. So like Dave Chappelle very famously was one of the first on the train of using these, and he and John Mayer actually toured together one time. There was like a comedy and music duo kind of thing, and John Mayer started using it for his shows as well. So it's kind of, as some artists are seeing the benefits of it, I think it's growing a lot. One of the first to use it was the Lumineers, I think, back in 2016. They were doing like a series of secret shows, and they kind of wanted the experience of it to stay.
To sort of live in that moment only.
Well, not only that, but they didn't want, like, when they go to another town and they've got this kind of like special setup, and they just wanted everybody to see it with fresh eyes for the first time when they're there in the room, which is, I think, is the same thing that's appealing to comedians. It's like if they're out on the road doing material, somebody's about to go see them at the Tennessee Theater. They don't want somebody recording it in Birmingham at the Alabama Theater 3 nights before they see it on a cell phone video.
Yeah.
It really ruins the experience of going to see it because they can't be expected to come up with new material every single night.
That was, I think you probably just answered my next question, but is the biggest concern from an artist's perspective the effect that cell phones have on the experience, or is it things like recording video and putting it on YouTube? And I guess there's a lot of fail safes for like YouTube and stuff like that already, so it's probably more
Not really. You mean like YouTube will take it down if
Yeah.
you put it? Not really. In theory, but that doesn't really happen all that much.
Is it more the monetary
they're more
recording?
interested in taking down like copies of professional recordings that people that YouTubers or somebody posting it doesn't have the rights to.
Gotcha.
But like if you take a cell phone video at a U2 concert, they're not going to take that down from YouTube.
So is it mostly, do you think the artists are wanting to create a genuine, authentic experience?
I think that's the main driving factor. I think that's the biggest appeal for it, is that sometimes people need a little motivation, or I guess in this case being forced to just like, hey, you're not going to have your phone out during this. This is a shared experience we're all going to have together in this moment, and you don't need to be like worrying about filming something. And I think the biggest thing is not for enhancing the experience of the person filming the phone. It's like you mentioned at the Switchfoot concert. It's to keep the integrity of the experience for the person sitting behind the person with the phone.
Yeah.
Because we've all seen it. It can be really distracting with like a bunch of hands go up with like the dimly lit cell phone light, especially with people's like hands up in front of you. But I think the biggest thing that it can be used for is like quieter theater shows, like say Jason Isbell does a solo set at like Tennessee Theater, or like something like that. I think because if people are talking on their cell phones, or you can actually hear the
Heaven
ping.
forbid flash photography.
Right?
Like,
Yeah, that
the
too.
most distracting thing in the world.
Yeah.
So what happens? I show up to the venue. They ask me for my phone. I tell them I didn't bring one. And then I get into the show, and I've got my phone. Like, does that happen? I mean, I'm assuming that has to happen.
I would assume.
I
It
just don't know
happened-
how you
it
like
happened
take
in,
someone's sort of like personal property quotes. You know,
In
like,
one of the last couple of specials that Dave Chappelle put out, somebody's phone goes off in the middle of it, and you can kind of hear the room go ooh, and he even jokes about it. He's like, I'm not gonna like give this guy detention or something.
What is this, high school? This nigga probably got a babysitter or something. Go on and answer your phone, nigga. Just get that shit out of here. I'm in the middle of something important. Wouldn't it be fun if we made fun of him? He's like, and he went outside like, hello? Mama's dead. Oh no! Mama's dead. That's a weird time phone call,
That's
wasn't it?
not. I think I cleaned up the language, but anyway. So yeah, I think that does happen. I don't think there are like penalties for like trying to game the system, but it's kind of just like I feel like if it's coming from the artist to put that much work into everybody locking up their phones, I think it's kind of just like an everybody be cool factor, because you don't want to be the one dum-dum who kind of skirted the rules and thinks you're above the law and everybody else.
has Born and Raised done a cell phone free show?
No.
We cannot afford that technology at all.
Well, there's a handful of reasons why we wouldn't do it, but like, yeah,
But you
we
could
can't
just put a sign up that says "Please no cell phone use."
Whenever we
I
have like like what I was talking about, like more intimate shows, like a quieter acoustic show, we make a point to get up on stage beforehand and tell everybody to turn off your cell phones or at least silence them. And if you want to talk, take it outside because, I mean, for all the reasons that I just listed, like
You can talk anywhere in the whole world.
yeah.
But this is the only place that you can listen to music and respect that by talking somewhere else.
Yeah. And even if they don't, take our advice on that, the artist always at least appreciates that we made an effort to try to get people to shut the hell up.
Yeah, I think that responsible phone usage is fine. Like I understand wanting to take a photo, and as a business and a lot of the artists that we represent, like getting the name out of what we're doing is super
like
important.
me taking a picture and posting it on Facebook is marketing. It's good for business.
Yeah, maybe Jason Isbell doesn't need that right now, but a lot of the artists we're working with, like having that exposure is valuable. It's not as valuable as a great experience, so we don't want it to interrupt the show. But I also don't think I want to give that up. So I think that the kind of the stance that we've taken is we want to make it a priority that people take the show seriously, and that's why we say those things at the beginning of the show. And we've tried to develop a culture around our shows that it's like, listen, we charge a little bit higher ticket price than most shows at our level, and the reason is because we want people who value music to come to them.
Yeah. But in terms of what
you're
you're talking about, like people having a whole ass conversation during a concert is way more invasive than somebody raising up their cell phone to take a photo,
right?
Or even a video of like half a song.
Parker Millsap, where that guy was whispering.
I was thinking about that a second ago. Yeah,
so much louder than just normal talking. Somehow
that poor guy was trying. He really was trying to not be a distraction, but he just did not understand the difference between whispering and yelling because he was like, hello,
I'm at a show.
That's funny.
And everyone in the room, including the artist, kind of just like turned and looked at him, and it was just like, how are you not getting this man? Hang up or go outside.
Golly, that's obnoxious.
I hope he's listening. He's not, but I hope he is, and he knows.
So do you think we'll see more of that in the future?
I do.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be every show. But I think that there's definitely some appropriate like circumstances that call for it.
Who do you? So you said a company most likely did that. Do you think was the venue responsible for hiring that company, or was
that's
the
something
artist?
that will come as a request from the artist side, and then they'll have I would imagine this is just speculation on my part. I would imagine if they're working with that company, they're probably bringing the equipment with them.
Because I was thinking, like Jason Isbell, just using him as an example, if he's going to go on a 30-day tour and he wants them all to be cell phone free, I would imagine that company would travel with him.
It's funny that we've kind of settled into using Jason Isbell as an example. Jason Isbell tweets all the time. I'm sure he's fine with people having phones at his concerts. He would probably rather you not film his entire concert with your phone, just like anybody else. But still, what was the question?
Oh
yeah, I would assume they go on tour with them.
Yeah. But you think maybe as it grows in popularity, some of the larger, bigger venues might invest in that system so that they could offer it as a plus to any artist that came there.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the case.
That's fascinating.
Whatever venues are left, yeah.
Well, I have one. Yeah, I've got one final question.
I'm not ready for those kind of jokes yet.
I guess
Too soon.
One final big question, and actually is kind of relevant to the comment you just made. I'm sure we'll get some more questions out of it. But, we are in the midst of COVID-19 outbreak, as you mentioned. It's affecting small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
It's affecting everybody. And I can only imagine that it has had I know it's had a negative impact on you all. We talked about this on the radio show, and
it's been a weird couple months.
Yeah. So our artists, our musicians who made a majority of their living off of performing music live, able to get some of the government assistance that small business owners are getting? Can you file unemployment for being a live musician? I'm just kind of curious how that works and how that's been working.
I don't know if you listened to episode 6 of the Born and Raised Music podcast, but your business associate who sits at a desk 3 feet from you laid this out in great detail. Oslo Cole came on and talked about this very thing. He came on and talked about it before. It was after the CARES Act passed, and before people were starting to actually be able to file for those unemployment benefits through the state of Tennessee. You're now able to make those claims as a musician, gig worker, contract worker, whatever you want to call it. I have not personally known anybody who has yet received any of those benefits.
Do you think that's more of a federal issue or a state of Tennessee issue?
Both, but it's
the money is at
it's
the
a
state
Tennessee.
level now.
Yeah, it's a state of Tennessee.
It's the state of Tennessee
issue. But at the same time, like, this is feeling very weird that I'm going to defend any state or
Don't do it,
federal
man.
government.
Don't
but
do it.
I will say, before all this happened, there was not any kind of mechanism built for being able to give unemployment benefits to people who are self-employed or work on a contract basis. Because
Freelancers, sort of.
yeah,
So what you're saying is that this virus exposed an enormous amount of flaws in our already broken system.
yes, it did, but that's not what this is that I'm talking about. So, you know, before this happened, if you were self-employed and by nature of that you're unemployed, it just means you sucked at being self-employed. But now there's a real legitimate reason that,
Or a
that
case of
certain
something
people
outside of your control
Exactly.
is the reason for the loss of your income.
So with there being no mechanism already in place, they've had to basically like either try to shoehorn all this stuff into an already existing system that had tons of bugs and flaws in it already, maybe on accident, maybe by design, to make it harder for you to actually be able to make claims on these unemployment benefits.
Artificially
So
low
basically,
in
if I
unemployment
start a
numbers.
roofing company and all of a sudden my sales are declining because the other roofing companies are doing a better job, I can't file for unemployment because I just
Right.
Lost.
lost.
Yeah.
But if I own a roofing company and the pandemic happens and everyone stops buying roofs because of the pandemic,
Right.
there's now potentially a doorway for that opportunity.
I don't know anything about the roofing business. I'm honestly not sure how
Well, I was just
how
using
that
as an
works for somebody like
example,
them.
But like, because you think about it,
But
musicians.
in the event world, like, we literally cannot do, like, doing events is like the single most dangerous thing that we can do right
Yeah.
now. So in theory, you can apply for benefits if you are a musician. But again, I haven't actually heard of anybody actually receiving those benefits yet. Hopefully, if somebody's listening to this and they've gotten some of those, I'd love to hear from them.
Let us know.
Yeah.
You could be the lucky guest number 9.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly complicated at first when
Future episode.
when people were actually able to file for those claims. There would be a thing that would pop up and say that if you're self-employed, you're not eligible for benefits, and that was literally like they had to, rather than just take that out of it, there was an instructional video on the Jobs 4TN website that was like, this will pop up, just ignore it. It's like, why would you just take it out?
Just take it out. Yep.
Yeah, there's just a lot of like weird idiosyncrasies about the system that just make it incredibly convoluted and really hard to navigate. But if you need that money, you got to do it. So
Yeah,
This is-
if I were giving any advice to artists right now about this, it's go apply right now. Go apply, jump into every single thing you
the
can.
only thing you've lost is 30 minutes of your time to fill out the
Right.
application.
Fill it out.
30
Or-
minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Get out ahead of it as quickly as you can. Get in that system, and then don't wait for that money. Don't wait, because you're gonna be waiting a while. So make sure you're looking for other opportunities.
Other opportunities, yeah.
Music is something that's helping all of us get through this. I mean, we've upgraded our system here in the office because it's helping us cope with everything. So like, people want music, they want to buy music. Just find ways to reach your fans and connect with them. Patreon is blowing up right now.
And the Beer
You
Me
know?
That Vinyl thing that you all just started has been really cool too.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, it's been a really cool way to support both. That we've only done 2, both artists that we've got on there, and it's also supporting breweries, so it's a nice little tie-in to that. But yeah, I mean, we're all trying to figure this out. We work in live entertainment, so like we are just restructuring our business altogether.
Yeah, you're basically starting a new business.
Yeah, pretty much.
On what we hope is a temporary basis, and then we restructure when we're back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, well, the good thing is and something we've always talked about is like, you know what, if we can build a really successful revenue stream during a pandemic and it can exist when we have our other revenue stream when things go back to normal, now we have 2 revenue streams.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? So you're
Yeah.
putting in the work. You're gonna, if you can figure it out, it's gonna pay dividends.
There's
in the long
definitely
run.
some things that we've done at Knox Brew Tours in the last 6 weeks that we will continue to do, and that will have changed who we are as a company in a good way.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate you guys giving me some of your time to ask these questions. I'm
Yeah.
always thinking, and I love sitting on the other side of the office and hearing you guys, work and how much you love music and care about Knoxville, and you guys are definitely passionate. So I appreciate you letting me pick your brain for a little bit.
Well, thanks for having us on your podcast.
Is assuming that we might do this again
Yeah.
in the future,
Uh-huh.
if anyone who's listening has any questions for Garrett and Kent that you're embarrassed to ask them and you want to remain anonymous, just shoot me an email at zach@knoxbrewtours.com.
Yeah.
And next time we hop on here, I'll ask that question for you.
Yeah. Hey, head to knoxbrewtours.com. Check out what they got going on.
Thanks.
Can't imagine anybody would be embarrassed to ask us.
Get us to come do a celebration bus at your house. We'll come.
Yeah.
We'll come anywhere as
Yeah.
long as it's close to Knoxville.
Especially
And by
anybody
I
who's
mean
seen
close,
us
I
do
mean
a
in Knoxville.
celebration bus would not be embarrassed to ask us anything.
That's true.
That's very true. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate y'all both. Cheers.
Likewise,
Cheers.
cheers.